one you've seen now. Welcome to all of you. I've seen some representative for Swedish media here, and some students, and some especially interested guests. This is a highly interesting subject, although it might seem complicated just at the first glance. We've gathered to learn more about European Media Freedom Act. It is still a proposal in the process of being secured by a council negotiation mandate. And it will for sure be one of the important subjects during the Swedish presidency, January 1st. This first part of the seminar is about 45 minutes, and we look forward to that you, the audience, that you engage, you ask questions, you share with us if you have opinions, and you just raise your hand. This seminar is also live streamed on Facebook and YouTube. There is a second part for specially invited journalists to have a more, should I say, private discussion with you, a roundtable discussion. So those of you who are kind of specializing in journalism, just stay on and we will start after 45 minutes, something like that. So now, honored Commissioner, please tell us more about the Media Freedom Act.
And Eva, please stop me at some moment, because we only have 45 minutes for each other here.
I mean, the setup here is 45 minutes, yes, and then a short pause, and then the discussion roundtable. But if you need more, I can be more short. I mean, you just take your time, because you're the interesting person right now.
It's always important to have an interaction and not just a monologue from my side, so I think I will manage in maybe 10 minutes. And thank you very much for the Czech flag. I swear it never happened to me before. Yeah, because when you become the commissioner, they tell you, forget from where you are coming. You just have to stop being Czech and start being European. I don't have a problem being both at the same time, so thank you very much. And thank you for coming. I think that the moment is maybe more important for me than for you, because I need to get your feedback and your comments on what we prepared, which we call Media Freedom Act. And this is the first comprehensive set of rules for the media, about the media. And I have to defend the proposal already heavily, because there are many supporters, but also many opponents, and the opponents always tell me to start regulating the media, it's the start of censorship. And I have to say at the very beginning, we are not regulating media, we are not regulating the content, we are regulating the landscape, the environment for the media. Why? What is the rationale or the reason? Well, we see the data showing very negative trend in almost all member states of the EU. If you are interested in that, it's the annual report under the title of Media Pluralism Monitor. This survey is elaborated by the university in Florence in cooperation with the universities from all the member states. And there are maps showing the situation of media in Europe. And the darker the color, the worse the situation. And we are dark red in many, many member states. And what the data show, there is higher and higher politicization and attempts of politics to interfere into the editorial freedom of media. There is much bigger pressure stemming from the financial difficulties which the media sector faces. It's more dangerous to work as a journalist than it used to be. A lot of security threats. It's more dangerous also from economic point of view, because there are a lot of journalists working in small media houses or freelance. And so when you look into that, you realize that we should do more to protect media in the EU. We have some bad examples or some bad actions in several member states against the media. And for instance, withdrawal of license to Klub Radio in Budapest or similar events or similar actions in Poland. We had also some troubles in Slovenia. And I was asked many times, what will you do about that? Commissioner for Values. Value means also democracy, and media are the watchdogs of democracy. So what will you do, Jourová? And Jourová had to reply again and again, I cannot do anything, we don't have any media law on European level. And so I started to dig into what are the possibilities to act for the EU. And I saw that the media sector has equal protection as any other sector on our European single market. The same level of protection as the producers of socks or shoes. Nothing against the producers of socks. But we do not expect the producers of socks to do the job to protect democracy and to deliver the facts to people. And in time when you see that the impact of disinformation goes up and the trust to media goes down, it's a very dangerous moment and something which requires reaction. That's why, by seeing all these negative trends, the Commission did three things. First of all, I sent a very concrete recommendation to the member states to protect the security of journalists better. We have some killed journalists in Europe. We also have many hundreds of injured journalists in the recent years. Second thing, it was the legislation against the strategic lawsuits against public participation, so-called SLAPs, abusive lawsuits which are very often launched by those who are in power to silence the journalists. So I proposed the legislation to minimize the impact of such or appearance of such lawsuits. And the third thing is the Media Freedom Act, which we adopted in September. In this act, we are introducing more safeguards against all types of interference in media's editorial independence, be it private or public. The proposal drastically limits the deployment of spyware, which has been used recently against journalists in certain member states. The Act also acknowledges the key role of journalists to inform us and to make democracy work, and notably, journalists and editors will be better protected from undue interference in editorial decision-making. For instance, the pressure on the journalists to disclose the information sources is prohibited or minimized, only to the situation when the serious crime is at stake. So we are minimizing the possibility of the state to interfere into the work of the journalists. We are looking at public service media, and we came to a conclusion that public service media need also stronger protection. And so we are introducing the rule that the public service media should have sustainable and sufficient financing from the public money, and also that the people are to be nominated and appointed as managers or members of the media public service media boards should be selected through objective, non-discriminatory and transparent process. These are rather general rules for the public service media. There are states who tell us do not legislate at all, especially because of this public service media angle. And some states who say to us, well, you should be more concrete. What means sufficient funding? Put there some figure. And we resisted that. So we kept it on the general level. Then we establish common principles for national scrutiny procedures of media market transactions and restrictions to market entry and operation of the media, in addition to actions enhancing transparency of media ownership and audience measurements. In other words, again, in some member states, we see that there are transactions and mergers of media which start to negatively influence the media pluralism and opinion pluralism. So again, the example in Hungary, the monopoly, which is called KESMA, there are several hundreds of media outlets which work under this KESMA structure, which was established by the state, and the competition rules do not apply there. So it can grow more and more, and it also gets funding from the public money. So you can imagine this is the system we don't want to see. We want to see healthy media market. So we are introducing some criteria for assessing the transactions and whether it's not the case of this unhealthy concentration of media ownership in one pair of hands. Well, this is a measure against oligarchization of media, if you want me to use the proper word. Transparency is a key word there. We want to see more transparent ownership of media and more transparent public funding, so that we know where the money from the public budgets go and why, whether there was a fair competition. Or whether the money doesn't go only to those who write nice articles about us who take decisions. We are setting the structure for enforcement. We call it ERGA Plus, the oversight governance system at EU level. This ERGA Plus and this European Media Board should consist of one representative per country, and this board should take non-legally binding opinions in different situations. I believe that in the legislative process, this structure will belong to the most discussed matters. There are two more things which I wanted to mention. This European Media Board should give the opinion also, or issue the opinion in case of some security threat which is coming to EU through the media from the third countries, from outside. I will give you the example. This is the reaction on our situation which we were facing this year in summer. I'm sure you noticed that we have put on the sanction list Russia Today, Sputnik, 3 more TV stations. Also, the Baltic Sea countries already took some decision on the national level. And some say banning the media, it's censorship. But we did very proper analysis, and we came to a conclusion that these are not media anymore. These are just tools for the war propaganda. And also these are the so-called media owned by the people who are on the sanction list. But it was the decision of the Commission itself. We had to decide it and to propose it to the member states. Having this board, which is foreseen by the media law, having this board which will issue the opinion will make it, again, more transparent. It will be collective decision, which will be maybe better understood by the general public. So this is the arrangement for the future possible security threats and risks which we might face in the future. Last thing which I find important in the Media Freedom Act, we want to protect the content developed, written by the professional media. We want to protect this content better against the actions of the digital platforms. Because the digital platforms are not only authorized, we want them to moderate the content and to remove illegal content like extremism, terrorism, hate speech or child pornography. But we don't want them, the platforms, to have the last word. And here we speak about legal content. So when the recognized professional media produce the content and want to place it to the system, they should get early warning from the platform that there might be some moderation or some removal, some action from the platform itself. And such media should have a chance to defend their content immediately against such decision. What will be the destiny of this law? It will be quite a lot in the hands of the Swedish presidency. The Czechs will, I think, escape it partly because they will only have a first discussion in the council where the ministers of culture are sitting. And I myself wonder how it will work. I am ready to defend it as a lion because I believe that we propose something which is necessary and feasible in practice. But what I hear from the member states, from those where the safeguards for media work well, it's probably also Sweden, I hear, you are coming with this European law which will decrease the standards in our country. And I ask them, show me where it is, where are we decreasing, because this is the minimum harmonization. We do not touch the systems which have stronger safeguards than what we foresee in the law. There is a special chapter. This is, for instance, the German publishers, the representatives of the printed media who say you don't have any competence to do that at all. So still I am facing the criticism that we should not have done it at all. There are states which are telling me it'll be a good thing to have some protection of media at the EU level in case the things go mad in our country. These are the countries where the representatives I spoke to can imagine that there might be the government which will have the appetite to decrease the editorial independence of the media. And they will not hesitate to do that. I heard this in France before the presidential elections. There was sufficient imagination in France for such situation that there might be something like that, some appetite to tame the media. I heard it in Italy. I heard it in my country. So I don't see many member states who would be absolutely sure that in their country there will never be a moment of destruction of the media independence. So it might be taken as a bad news that we don't have good mood in Europe, that we can imagine bad things. But on the other hand, it's better to imagine and to take protective measures when it's still time to do that. So, Madam, now it's for you, and now it's for you. Thank you very much. I just skipped several things, which I believe I will come back to in case your questions.
But it was interesting, very interesting indeed, especially to hear about how you were discussing when the Commission took the decision to stop Russia Today and Sputnik as tools for propaganda, not as media. I mean, it makes sense. So, yeah.
Also because of who owns and who established these media. So it was not about the content so much, more about the establishment.
I have a battery of questions here, but if there is a question right now, just after the commissioner's speech, raise your hand. So I raise my hand. If you start from the very beginning, because this is a part of the entire work with the Commissioner's broader European Democracy Action Plan. It was announced in December last year, right? So give us some of that background, because that was the start of this work, I guess.
Yes, indeed, the European Democracy Action Plan is the set of measures. You will not be surprised how to protect democracy in the EU. And there are three main chapters, or maybe I will add one more, which is there as well. First of all, the protection of elections. Second, fight against disinformation. Third, protection of media. And the fourth, strengthening the civil society. And when you realize, or when you read through this Democracy Action Plan, you will see the logical connections between those different chapters. For instance, for the elections, I think you might remember the Cambridge Analytica case, when for the first time we saw the method of not stealing, abusing the private data of people for influencing their electoral preferences. And we realized that this is not what we want to see in Europe. That's why after Cambridge Analytica, before the elections in 2019, I invited the electoral commissioners to Brussels, and I told them, well, I see four real threats for elections, for integrity of elections in the EU, and you will maybe agree with me, there is no democracy without safe, free and fair elections. One thing was cyber attacking, so the electoral infrastructure must belong to critical infrastructure which has stronger protection. The second is this abuse of private data for micro-targeting. The third was disinformation, which is just pushed to the heads of people just before the elections. And the fourth is the lack of rules for online political campaigning. Half of the member states did not notice that the political campaigning has shifted to online space and still regulating old style printed leaflets and the billboards and you know what. So we proposed legislation against micro-targeting for political purposes. We also, what else? On elections, we came with the new rules for European political parties, which is maybe I don't want to get stuck on that. On disinformation, we promised in this action plan to come with the code of practice against disinformation, which is now fully in force. This is a voluntary commitment from the big platforms and advertising industry, many other actors. This is creation of the mechanism where we care for the truth and for the facts without authorizing anyone to be the arbiter of the truth. This is absolutely crucial for me. I lived in communist regime. I remember the arbiters of the truth. And I remember the people being in prison because of that. So I mean, this action plan, elections, disinformation, plus the protection of media, all that should create the better conditions for the European democracy to survive.
So this is a part of a big package.
Yes.
Yeah. You seem to be a very pragmatic person, and you have obviously already met lots of hesitation when it comes to regulate media. As you say, it's not like socks or shoes. But if still, I mean, describe with this kind of, and you also seem to be kind of listening now how to constructive word, for example. But describe, what do you hope, if you really, what is realistic to see? What do you hope that this Free Media Act will have achieved within, say, 5 years' time?
Well, of course, I'd like to see a quick process. So hopefully next year, I hope we will get achieve the adoption by the member states and by the Parliament. In the European Parliament, there are more maybe friendly reactions than the level of the member states. But we still need to discuss it, and I am ready to defend the proposal, because I believe we need that. I am ready to discuss some changes. I am not ready to compromise to make compromises
on the core values,
on the core things. And when we were working on this media law, and I never worked in media, so it's a daring exercise for me. I was surrounded by many experts and lawyers and media workers, of course journalists. I consulted heavily the whole summer this year, because I wanted to do this right, to propose something which will be neither the atomic bomb nor the cosmetics. So I hope we are somewhere.
You're touring Europe right now, telling the member countries about this act, and you mentioned some of the reactions you've got. But what is a country like Hungary or Poland or Slovenia? They are known to be kind of restricted when it comes to press media. To support free media. So what are their reactions? How do they answer up to you? None? Just silence?
We hear more the reactions from the states where the safeguards are high. We don't hear so much, officially none. But I guess there might be objections based on the lack of competence, or I don't know, interference into that or that. I don't.
But does the silence worry you?
No, I expect it.
Because it's very easy to kind of put it under the cover. We haven't done. We don't, get into discussion about it, and so we haven't noticed it, so we don't care. It might be an interpretation.
I didn't hear official reaction from many different countries, and so this is waiting for the moment when we, for the first time, will have the discussion with the ministers of culture, which might be in December this year. I will hear for the first time the official positions.
But do you think this act will make a difference in Poland, for example?
Well, definitely this law, after it comes into force, will give a clear message to the politicians. Think twice before you act, before you take action against the media. Because there is this very general clause or general articles which says that politics must not interfere. And I think this article is missing in EU because there is the conviction that it's a broader thing, because I also deal with the rule of law matters and the protection of civil society. When we see autocratic tendencies, you see first that there is the attack on independent judiciary. The independent judge seems to be the public enemy number one. Independent journalist, active civil society, active citizens. There is nothing better for the autocrat than to have passive people. And then, of course, the academic freedoms and professional state administration, which not all the people paid by the state should kiss the ring of Mr. Autocrat. I will not name anyone. So we try to address all these things, but the media situation is very It's a striking example of the concrete actions taken by the state which wants to interfere into the content.
True. I've gone through the Swedish Media Publishers Association's answer to this proposal. They welcome the intentions of the Free Media Act.
It doesn't start well.
Oh well, I mean, they do welcome the intentions. They see the need for it, and they see the need for protecting media pluralism and independence. But I think their concern, in short, is that does it really exist a common European media market where one size fits all? I guess that's their main concern.
I believe that one set of standards should fit all. And when you read through the law, we are setting the principles, the standards. We try not to micromanage or to prescribe how the media should work or how the media should be protected. So, but I think that this is what I will hear again and again. I will hear a lot of howevers. This is a very fashionable word. Yes, we agree, this is necessary. However, so I am ready for that. But at the same time, I am ready to listen. I will come
that is
into
obvious.
That
I mean, yeah,
with both ears
that is
open.
obvious. But tell us more about this proposed board. An oversight governance system at EU level is your description, I read. And you said this is going to be one of the most discussed issues, you said before. Tell us a little bit more. How do you think, how have you what's your vision of this board?
First of all, there must be a strong independent body to oversight the media landscape in each member state. That is the main role. And main work to be done. Even if in the situations when some media, some radio will be under the pressure from the state, the conflict around the license or I don't know, some decision which would have liquidating power, even in such situation, such radio should go to the national court, and the media board should give opinion. And so I just want to illustrate that the power to decide on the matter or to impose some sanctions will be very limited, if any at all. And then at the European level, each member state will send one representative to the European Media Board to discuss the matters which have cross-border scope and which will require collective opinion, which will then serve also for the Commission for the further steps. And the further step in case of an infringement of this law means that we will launch the procedure which might end up at the European Court of Justice. So sorry, this is too legalistic answer, but we at this moment we have nothing in our hands.
And how could one then secure that the representatives from some of the countries are not elected by the government?
They
are very state loyal.
Of course, they
trying to influence the freedom in other countries where the representatives are more independent.
Well, of course, we cannot guarantee that.
But isn't there an obvious risk?
Well, it belongs to the risks, yes. Because whatever we do, whatever legislation we prepare, where we foresee the setting up of some independent professional bodies, we have no other choice than to rely on the state that he or she. What is the state in a Swedish language? He or she?
It's neutral.
It's neutral.
Yes.
Okay.
Stat.
In Czech language, it's he.
Yeah.
But patria is she. So, of course, we cannot push the member states to nominate and appoint the people who are absolutely immune from the political pressure. But
what kind of... Here we go. Yes, please. Better get a microphone from behind. And yourself, I think it's on.
My name is Erik Hacker. I'm the president of Report Without Borders in Sweden. So I represent Report Without Borders in Sweden, and I think if you read our response, it's more positive than the Swedish Publishers Association to this law. We will help you defend it. But I have some questions, and it's to complicate or to continue the question from Eva about the oversight board. Is there sort of a set of guidelines that you can go, because it sounds like a bit of ad hoc in the case of the Russian media. You decided in this case this, but do you have any set of standards that can be used for the next case or the next media that will be in question at this board? And another question that connects to this is the online platforms, who will help them decide which media are classified as truly journalistic media that should get the help from this. I guess it's the same board, or if it's another entity. I will stop there. I have another question, but I will stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, first,
Erik.
of course, there will always be some ad hoc reaction through the opinion on the new situations. But I believe that over time, there will be the guidelines or some I don't know, some analysis at least developed together. There is nothing at this moment at the level of the EU relating to the situations which we are now facing. So I believe that it will be similar as what we see in data protection world, that the European Data Protection Board is developing together the guidelines which then help to apply the GDPR and data protection rules in the same way in all the member states. So I'm sure there will be guidelines which will be setting which will concretize the standards which are set in the media law. As for the online platforms, they will. We put into the law the definition of the recognized media, which says that, if I will be able to remember that, there must be transparent and clear ownership of the media. They must have some ethical standards which they respect and which are publicly known. What else? Do you remember? There is one more thing. But we avoided in the legislation up to now to bring the definition of what is the media and what is the journalist, because the experts themselves are telling us, if you want to kill the sector, come with some smart definition. So we did not get into this trap, but we have described the parameters for the recognized professional media. And in the case of such media, the platforms will have to give ex ante alert that they want to moderate the content. So there will be, I'm sure, some lists of media which will have this special treatment, which I believe is needed.
So,
thank you. Thank you for a great speech. My name is Anna Wetter.
I think your mic is off.
Is it off? I was just, yeah.
Important, because the madam was thanking me for great speech. For the case somebody missed
Great
it.
speech. I'll repeat it. I'm a senior researcher of law at the Swedish Institute for European Policy Studies, and I would, just before my question, like to highlight that I fully share your concerns regarding the democratic backsliding in many member states. But with all due respect for that negative development, I'm also a bit concerned from the legal perspective about the proposal, considering it, member states have their own constitutional systems, and this could actually be quite intrusive in those systems. So my question really is whether you find, if let's say these member states go mad, you mentioned those words yourselves. And we already have a few member states that have gone mad, and we have infringement cases, and the Court of Justice have replied that this is in violation of the Article 2. So my question is whether, because to legitimize this Media Freedom Act in my legal world, I would like to know why this proposal, or why this legislation is found to be more effective. I mean, we would have new infringement procedures, we would have probably new case judgments, but how does that help if you have mad member states? Wouldn't it be enough just to use the Article 7, not being so efficient right now, but we have systems to protect the democratic values enshrined in Article 2. So my question is, what is the added value, considering it's intrusive in the life of the member states? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this moment, indeed, we have Article 2, we have the freedom of expression protected. But as I told you, when we saw the acts of some states against the independent media, we were totally helpless. We could not launch the infringement procedure because, legally speaking, you can only launch such procedure when you have the European law, which sets the standards against which you measure whether the state did something wrong. We cannot launch the infringement procedure at the background of the national law or national constitution. That's why we realize that there is the missing pan-European law, which would set the standards which should fit in all member states. So that's why we started to do the mapping, how far we can go. Of course, the legal competence is not the strongest one, but when you look at it with the common sense, I really believe that we owe that to the media. We owe them some stronger protection, because if we only approach them as any other actor on the single market, then we cannot expect too much from them. And we want them to do very important thing. You mentioned yourself, democratic backsliding. It's also connected with the increased power of disinformation and hate speech online, and the decreased trust of people and to the media, and devaluation of the truth. And I don't speak about my truth only. You know, when politician starts to speak about the truth, he or she normally thinks that it's his truth. I'm not different. But there should be some protection of the facts and rehabilitation of the facts. And this is what we want from the journalists. Look at the war. There are brave people, journalists working in the battlefield. How greatly we are dependent on them continuing the job, not only because we must understand what is really happening in Ukraine, but also that we have that very logical and morally strong ambition to punish the perpetrators of the war crimes. So we will need the evidence, and this is also the task of the journalists working in the war zone. I know it's an extreme case, but unfortunately we live through the era of extreme events.
The last question then, perhaps a brutal one. This board, as you see it now, would it have muscles, and what kind of punishment will come if a member state doesn't behave according to the standards?
Well, it will belong to the European Court of Justice in case there will be the infringement procedure, which will lead to the court. They can impose rather considerably high sanctions.
Fines. So it will be a board with muscles. It's not an advisory board. It's a kind of a powerful board.
It's not a declaration, it's a law. So I told you I tried to come with something which will have the teeth but which will also set the standards which will help many to in the member states to refer to. These are the standards, and we should protect the media better in our country. I believe that it can work. Also, not as a declaration, but rather as a continuous pressure.
So thank you very much, Commissioner Jourová.
Is that it?
No, because there will be, I think, a gathering here with some journalists who are very specialized and who would like to have a more informal discussion. So you stay
Thank
on,
you.
and to the audience, I say thank you so much for
Thank you so
listening and
much.
for participating. So the few of you, and if you're a journalist or if you're into media in some professional way, please take the opportunity to